It's just expected. Sometimes that's what my manager told me when I asked about the constant late nights. There was no approval process, no overtime request form. It was just an expectation. So I didn't refuse outright. Instead, I started asking about the policy, and that's when everything began to change. It started subtly at first. A project would suddenly fall behind schedule. A client would escalate an issue right at 5 o'clock. A deadline would shift to the last possible minute. Then, the inevitable message would arrive in the team chat. We probably need to stay late this week to get this done. That probably quickly turned into definitely, and definitely soon became our new routine. In the beginning, I went along with it. Everyone did. It felt like part of being on the team, but something felt wrong. No one was submitting timesheets for the extra hours. There were no official overtime approvals coming from management. No one was offered compensatory time off for the long nights. There was just this unspoken understanding that if you were a team player, you stayed late. No questions asked. After the third consecutive week of working past 7 or 8 o'clock every night, I decided to talk to my manager. I approached him calmly. Wanting to understand the process, I asked, how should I log my overtime hours according to company policy? His reaction was just silence. A long, awkward pause. Then he said, we don't really track that at your level. That was interesting, because I was pretty sure the official employee handbook said something very different. That night, I went home and pulled up the employee manual. I read it cover to cover. The language was crystal clear. It stated that all overtime must be pre-approved by a manager. All hours worked must be logged accurately, and specific compensation guidelines applied depending on your job classification. There was nothing vague about it, no room for unspoken understandings. The very next time late hours were suggested in a team meeting, I sent a follow-up email. The subject line was simple: overtime approval, clarification. In the body of the email, I wrote, to ensure we are all in compliance with company policy, please confirm approval for the overtime hours discussed and provide guidance on how to log them correctly. I kept it professional, neutral, and completely not. I was just asking for clarification. My manager's reply came back almost immediately. He said, let's not escalate this. We're all just pitching in to get the job done. Escalate. I hadn't escalated anything. I had simply asked how to follow the company's own rules. This was the moment I realized that documentation was the key. From that point forward, my strategy was consistent. If overtime was requested verbally, I'd follow up with a polite email asking for written confirmation. If extended hours were just implied, I'd ask for an email confirming the approval. If weekend work was mentioned, I'd request written guidance on the project priorities and how to log the time. I never did it aggressively. I was just precise. Within 2 weeks, a noticeable shift started to happen. Leadership in other departments started seeing these overtime flags in project updates and budget reports. Questions started being asked. Then, HR reached out to my manager, asking for clarification on all the newly logged hours. Because once overtime stops being a quiet expectation and appears in black and white, it becomes a real, tangible liability. HR scheduled a call with me. Their tone was very measured, very careful. They said, we've noticed a significant increase in your overtime documentation recently. I replied calmly, I am just making sure my work is aligned with the requirements outlined in the employee handbook. It's pretty hard to argue with someone for following the rules. Soon after that, the messaging from my manager completely changed. Instead of hearing, we expect everyone to stay late tonight, the conversation became, okay team, let's reprioritize our deliverables to fit within the workweek. Deadlines that were once set in stone were suddenly extended. The scope of projects was adjusted to be more realistic. Those late night and weekend messages slowed down and eventually stopped altogether. Nothing dramatic ever happened. There was no big confrontation. I never faced any disciplinary action, but the culture of expected overtime began to fade. It faded because it was no longer invisible. It was now being recorded, tracked, and measured, and recorded time costs the company money. My manager did have one last thing to say to me about it. He said, "You've become very policy-focused lately." I just smiled and responded, I'm just focused on ensuring we all follow the company's standards. And that was the end of it. You see, when overtime is expected, it's unofficial and easy to exploit. But when that same overtime is documented, it becomes official and regulated. They didn't stop asking me to work late because I complained or pushed back. They stopped asking because it now required paperwork. It required a budget. It required accountability. They said overtime was expected. I simply asked about the policy, and once their expectation met my documentation, the expectation changed. So if you're in a similar situation, remember that you don't always have to fight. Sometimes you just have to follow the rules very, very precisely. Thanks for watching, and if this story resonated with you, consider subscribing for more content like this.